Today I want to talk about DACs, and after cables and interconnects, probably a very contentious topic. There's a lot of strong opinions about DACs, with some people saying, well, they all sound the same and they're all doing the same thing and there's no difference. Whereas a lot of other people swear by the differences between them. And spoiler alert, I can hear differences between DACs, and today at the end of this video I will do some sound comparisons which we'll re-record here in this listening room just using a simple in-room microphone, and hopefully you'll hear them even with the compression of YouTube, but it's likely that you may not. So what we are going to do is something very special. I'm going to take the output of the microphones and make a little track taken from this room, and then we're going to put it in the shop at Pearl Acoustics website, the loudspeaker and amplifier website. And you can go to that shop and you'll be able to download the output recording tracks in the same resolution that we record them, so that you can play them on your own systems and then circumnavigate, obviously, the YouTube quality. So that's all coming up, and I'm going to put in the description in the menu all the different chapters, so you can quickly jump to that if that's what you're interested in. But by the title of talking about DACs, one of the things that's really intrigued me over the years, because to be honest with you, I've never really been interested in DACs. I've just seen them as a necessary piece of technology to convert digital into audio. But a lot of reviewers and a lot of people claim, yeah, that the AKM chip, yeah, that's warmer, it's more musical, it's got this, or you've got to have that, and you've got to have the latest one. And other people will say, no, the Sabre DAC chips, they're the best and they're more analytical, or this. And then you've got Wolfson and well, all of the others, of course. And so I'm going to take two DACs, one with an AKM Pro chip and another one with a Sabre chip, and we're going to compare those. Those are going to be in the comparisons, but I will talk about that in more detail in a minute. But I think what might be interesting is a little bit of context here as to why I decided to take on this topic. Well, I was giving a demo here in the listening room here in Tienen in Belgium, and the customer was listening to the Sibelius loudspeakers and going, yes, very, very, very nice and whatever. And at a certain point, my faithful Sugden DAC preamplifier just gave up the ghost. The DAC section of it just stopped. There's a little blue light on the front for indicate the DAC, has totally separate power supplies from the preamp. It just went out and would not come back on. And so obviously I had to send that off back to Sugden, and I have to say that the distributor did a very good job, and literally within 3 days they'd fixed it and had returned it back to me personally here. So thank you very much for that. It was great service. And I was back up and running. But in that immediate moment, I was thinking, hang on a minute. Up until now, I've used the Sugden Pre with the Sugden DAC, and when I've been comparing with other things like the DAC in the Lingdorf and the DAC in the Blue Sound Node, which is what I use for streaming here, I was thinking, well, the Sugden DAC is always more musical and just nicer to me. So I've always run everything through the Sugden DAC, because the good thing about the Sugden DAC is it's got, you know, 2 coax inputs, 2 optical inputs, if I remember correctly, but it's got multiple inputs of each type, so you can just switch across. Of course, you have to get out of your chair, because Sugden being Sugden, all the input switching and everything is all manual, but that's not a problem. I mean, so that was my go-to DAC preamplifier. And then you may remember I recently made a video on the topic of preamplifiers, and I compared with lots of different preamplifiers, and I talked about those, and the cheeky little Topping D90 preamplifier which I got from Topping was technically so good, audibly so impressive. I mean, it way outperformed, in my mind, a lot of way more expensive DACs. Okay, it's not cheap. It was like, if I remember correctly, 900 euros. But it was so clean, so it didn't add anything to the color of the sound. It just gave me the gain that we needed, and lots of gain. So, and everything was nicely switching, and okay, it may be not as sexy as some of the beautiful DACs like the Mola and all those things, which cost tens of thousands of euros. And the preamps, I mean, and DACs. But it worked really, really well. So I thought, why don't I take this opportunity with the Sugden out of the way, albeit temporarily, to reach out to Topping and say, look, can you send me your state-of-the-art DAC that matches your preamplifier? Because then I would be able to just tuck it away, and I would really be interested to see what would it be like, and hence the topic today. So that's why this video is sort of focused a little bit around the D90, because with a lot of these topics, you've got to sort of put your stick in the ground and compare to and from and with. And so I chose that one because the little D90 DAC Mark III, this is the Mark III version, is very, very nice. It's almost exactly the same as the preamplifier in its format and everything. It only has one coax input, and it has an I2S, optical, USB, but just one of each, and AES. And then your balanced out or your RCA outs. This little Bluetooth is actually for the remote control. You may remember I had a little moan about the remote control on the preamplifier. And so with this one, they've put a Bluetooth in to get better connectivity, and so that can be tucked away out of sight somewhere. Now, I have to say, when I first got it in, I thought pretty impressed. So what I decided to do was to hook it straight up to my desktop system at home, which, if you remember, is the S.M.S.L phonitor with the Neumann monitor loudspeakers. The whole setup is really impressive, very, very detailed, very clean. So I thought, well, I will start listening to this with that. And yeah, so the first impression was exactly like most reviewers said. They said, "Oh yeah, this DAC is very revealing. It's maybe a bit too harsh in the top end," some people were saying, or it's a little bit maybe brighter than other DACs. I did sort of detect that, but I didn't think it was necessarily too bright. I just think maybe other DACs were rounded off slightly so that it would sound nicer. But it was, very, very clear, very detailed. Now, what I also want to talk about is how I could hear the differences, because if you are one of those people who says, I can't hear the difference between DACs, it's all a load of nonsense. Well, I'm going to show you how I listen out to those differences, and we'll come back to that later on. So basically, I hooked the thing up, and the one thing I noticed, as I say, was really the detail. And I thought, well, this is exactly what I would like to hear with our Sibelius loudspeakers, because the Sibelius loudspeakers are famous for being very, very revealing, having lots of detail in a forgiving way. And I thought, well, this might be interesting, and I wonder how it would compare with the Sugden. So that comparison's coming up in a minute. So if you read AudioScience Review, and if you follow the discussions on AudioScience Review, there's a guy called Amir, and he does all the tests, and he compares one DAC with another. And these two, this one here, which is, you may have seen it before in other programs of mine, is the S.M.S.L D400EX. Now, these two guys are like two Formula One racing cars. Or if you imagine, because the Olympics are on now, you've got the racing bicycles. Imagine that you are a professional racing cyclist and you want the very best bicycle to get you there. What you would expect of the bicycle manufacturer is to improve and optimize every single component of that bicycle. Anything that moves, all the bearings, reduce the weight, everything to make it go faster. Well, S.M.S.L. and Topping have been doing exactly that. This is why this is now the Mark III. And there is an argument that it's a complete waste of time, because in hi-fi, once you get above certain thresholds, like a signal to noise ratio of 100 decibels, really in all circumstances, you're not going to hear a difference. However, having said that, there's a big discussion on the internet about SINAD. And if you look on the AudioScience review, you will see that this guy is the overall winner. It has a better SINAD score. Now, what is SINAD? Basically, SINAD it's very simple. It's just taking the signal to noise ratio, so how much noise the object is making, the device is making compared to the signal coming in, and it's also measuring all the distortion that this product creates. And then it sums these two and you get a score. So you might think 123, 128, 100, whatever that this highest score is got to be better than one that scores lower. And interestingly enough, I asked Topping to send me something a lot cheaper, their bottom of the range product, this dinky little D10, which they did very kindly. And I will also make a little comparison recording with that from my home studio, because this little guy only has a USB input from a computer. It doesn't have any other input. So I can't work it with this setup. But I'll come back to that. So the point is, you think, well, this is scoring really, really well from the AudioScience review. Its linearity is fantastic. You know, the jitter is just unmeasurable. I mean, it's really doing a great job. So you think, okay, this is going to be perfect. And everybody's told me, yeah, this is so amazing. And John Darker did a really nice review of this product versus the shit around the same price. And I thought, well, intriguing, but why don't we compare it against the very, very best DAC that Topping make? Because maybe with its simplicity, with its very simple input, one thing input, and it's balanced out straight into my Pro equipment, maybe there's no difference. Maybe it's exactly the same. And maybe just spending, I think this is about $140 or something, rather than $900, why would we do this? And I can tell you, when this is plugged in, it's really, really cute, this little guy, because it switches itself on automatically. It detects when the signal takes its power from the computer, and it just comes on and it glows a lovely little orange. It looks really, really dinky on top of my SPL phonitor, and it sounds really, really good. But the question is, can I detect a difference between the very top performing Formula One, should we say, versus this little guy? Well, that will come up later. So both S.M.S.L. and Topping have been pushing the boundaries. So what's inside this box? I mean, it's quite crazy, really. The D90 has two professional DACs in it, and I'm just checking the numbers here. It's the ES9039SPRO, and that makes you think, wow, right? But it's got two of them. Now, each of these chips have 8 channels, and these channels can be paralleled up to reduce noise and even distortion to counteract each other. So they can be balanced up. So actually, you only need one chip to make a DAC. You don't need two. But because they want it to be perfect and perfect and perfect, Topping said, no, we're going to make a full dual mono balanced DAC. We'll have one chip for each channel. And obviously the resulting signal to noise ratios are unbelievable. Now, I'm coming back to this. The scoring that AudioScience and Amir come up with the SINAD, really don't take it in terms of what is best, just take it in terms of what is possible. And there's a very, very interesting article from headphone.com, and there's a video as well, and I'll put all the links in the description below, where Andrew Park gives a very, very good explanation of everything to do with SINAD and distortion and total harmonic distortion. And there's a review as well, which he and Blaine Lacrosse wrote between them. So please go to that. I'll send you the links. If you're interested in all the technical stuff, then you can go there and see that. But this guy, so for this particular, the Mark III, Topping improved the power supply inside. They made a kind of a low noise power supply. I don't know exactly what they've done, and someone says it's current to voltage converter, low noise floor switching, whatever. Well, it seems that S.M.S.L with the D400EX have done exactly the same, a new low noise power supply. They've got 2 AKM chips, but they're using, now let me just double check, because I don't learn these ones all off by heart for these things, whereas my notes on here, of course, it's the last one I need. They've got the 2 AK4499EX chip from AKM, and also the AKM chips. They have 2, one for each channel, balanced, just excuse me, just like Topping, but they have an AK4191 chip in front, which is standard in the AKM way of working, and that one is just a sort of a digital modulator, and it manages the jitter and the sync before it goes into the main 4499 chip. So architecturally, these two guys are very, very similar. The design approach is very, very similar. So I'm going to say that when and if you detect a difference between the two and make a judgment for yourself, I'm going to say I don't think it's going to be the chip, and I will tell you why. Because there are so many components in a DAC, from the power supply right the way through to the clock and all the method systems for controlling the jitter and all of these elements, and then crucially, from the output of the chip, you always have some preamplification to bring the voltage up to where you need it to be and to make the unit compatible with a preamplifier it's going to. And there, I think, is probably the major difference. I do need to say one more thing, though, however, that when you get a DAC with an AKM chip in it, you will see a number of filters. And a lot of reviewers will comment that they hear very, very little difference between those filters. And absolutely, I'm exactly the same. Because most of these filters are working way above the human hearing. But these filters, some manufacturers make out that somehow they made the filters, or it's something to do with them. But generally, the filters, the standard filters you get with the AKM, it's just a standard feature within the chip itself. However, SMSL adds some other, should we call them coloration filters, and they give them actually the names of colors, but I don't tend to use any of that, and in my comparisons I just ignored all of that. But what I did discover on the Topping, however, is that it had a filter, a sound filter, and it said tube or valve, and then it said transistor or off. And when you switched it to valve tube, the sound was really, really nice. It was like very relaxed, very forgiving. It was like calm and smoother and taken out. And I found that, so I think for a lot of people, when they're just on a Friday night, want to chill out or whatever, they can just switch over to the little filter, and that will actually, that will satisfy their needs. Now, valve sound, it's called, option. But here I'm going to give you a little feedback on what I felt about these two. To me, the S.M.S.L, this box here, very smart, very stylish thing, did sound a little bit more musical, slightly warmer to me in the mid-range. The level of detail was almost exactly the same. However, this guy was incredibly revealing. And when I hooked it up to its preamplifier here, Pre90, and set it up into my system here, and hooked it up to various power amplifiers like our KT170 and the different power amplifiers we have on display here, this was incredible. This was so revealing. That extra detail in the top end was just to die for. And this is now going to be a permanent feature of our listening room. So if you want to hear it, then you can come along and make an appointment, and we'll have it permanently on display here for you to compare between that and the Sugden. Now, you know, some people will prefer the Sugden. Maybe in some moods I will switch the Sugden on rather than this one. But if you want all the detail, all the precision, without any hint of any kind of distortion or coloration, then this guy for me was very slightly the overall winner over this one. If I had a choice of two, this is the one I would choose for my DAC. But there's nothing, absolutely nothing wrong with this, and this is beautifully made. Now, that a little niggle I do have is that this has got nice brass feet with nice rubber pieces, so it sits nicely on your worktop or whatever. Whereas the Pre90 from Topping has just a normal little rubber feet, so maybe they will update the Topping feet for the Pre90. So basically they don't match exactly. So if you're really into appearance, you might be very slightly disappointed that this is going to sort of look a bit nicer than the other ones. But that's a really minor thing. The other little thing I would say is that this has got, as I've mentioned already, a Bluetooth remote control, which is great. But this guy hasn't. The Pre didn't. And as you know, I did complain a lot about the remote control. But I've put in a little sensor here, and I put in one of these all-in-one learning remote controls, and that worked perfectly well. So now I can control everything from the Topping Pre, and in fact I can control this. But because this is Bluetooth, you still, for certain functions, either have to get out of your chair or pick up the other remote. So it would be nice if one day they bring out Topping modify the D90 Pre to make this completely seamless together with one remote control managing them both, because this one also has an AC trigger in and out 12 volt, which is great, fantastic. But of course the Topping D90 Pre doesn't, so you can't hook them all up. It does have an automatic switch on. So once it detects a signal coming in, it will switch itself on, which I like very much, and you can program it so the screen will go black very shortly after that. So I think that's about it on this. That for me, the AKM versus the Sabre chip. Is there a difference? I don't know. Will anyone ever know? Probably not, because it's almost impossible to compare unless you make exactly the same architecture, which in itself is more or less impossible. So all we know is that the end result is detail, precision, very similar to things like the Tembaki from Mola, and this one very detailed, very nice, but slightly, should we say, not, you can't say round off, but very slightly warmer in the mid-range. But you decide for yourself. I'm going to play the usual Claire Teal tracks, and I've got a very special track. I went to a concert recently, and a guy called Joris Vanvinckenroye, a double bass player, was performing some amazing double bass and getting incredible sounds out of his double bass. And I bought a couple of his CDs, and this CD, Basta, has a marvelous track on it called Cycles, and I've reached out to him and he's given me permission to use this. So I'm going to use Cycles as one of the tracks here to compare in the listening room. Okay, but also, as I say, we will make a version so that you can go to the pearlacoustics.com website shop, and then you can download what I have recorded in here for yourself to listen to. Now, Why have I chosen cycles? Because when you want to compare the difference between a DAC, if you just listen to a piece of music that you like, for example, there's so much going on. You've got mid-range and voice and cymbals and bass and drums and presence and sound stage and all of these things all happening at once. If the difference is minimal or minuscule even, because let's be fair, the difference between DACs is always very, very small. Darko puts it brilliantly in his video on the D10. It's always small. But if you're going to hear it, my tip is to listen to something acoustic, but with some room reverberation, some echo, some reverberation around it. And there's one track, it's really old. It's by Paul Simon. It's from the Still Crazy After All These Years album, and it's 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. And Steve Gadd is playing this very famous drum solo. Boom, 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 boom. That's not a very good representation of it. Sadly, I can't play it because I haven't asked permission, and for copyright reasons, that wouldn't work. But what happens is you've got this big boom, and if you listen really carefully to that sound of the echo after the boom, with a very revealing DAC, you'll hear lots of detail, lots of nuances, the timbre of the drum, but you'll hear a lot of detail in the echo. Also, after the boom is a on the hi-hat, on the closed hi-hat he has, and it's so subtle. Now with some DACs, like on the little one here, I noticed that it wasn't quite as pronounced as on the D90. And when you listen to the echo around that boom, it wasn't quite as full on the D10 as the D90. The D10 still sounded great, but that is something to listen out to. And again, on the cycles, it's an acoustic double bass. You'll hear it in a minute. There's a lot of air, there's a lot of sort of reverb around the notes. And if you listen very closely to those, you will see how revealing and how detailed a DAC can be and how it can compare. So you'll hear the difference. Well, I hope I haven't forgotten everything. I hope I haven't missed anything out. I will put loads and loads of links into the description, taking you to all the other sites I've mentioned about. And and I will also put links to the recommended tracks like 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. Excuse me again. My Cousin Dupree from Steely Dan is really, really good, from the Two Against Nature album, where he hits the snare drum, boom, and the detail in there, that's a nice one. Beethoven 4 from Anima Eterna, Joris Vanvinckenroye, really great if you want to listen to classical music, if you're really into that. That's a superb recording, and maybe in listening to those sort of recordings, you will just about hear differences between these DACs. The cycles, as I've talked about, and our famous Claire Teal singing I've Got You Under My Skin from Chasing the Dragon recordings, we will use those in the video now, but all the links will be in the description. So if you have been, thank you for watching this video, and enjoy the music, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.
deep in my heart, you're really a part of me. I've got you under my skin. I tried so not to give in. I've got you deep in the heart of me. So deep in my heart, you're really a part of me. I've got you under